A well-run franchise, doesn't just happen, certainly doesn't happen overnight, right? It's the result of repeatable, structured systems that allow growth without, sacrificing quality. Welcome to The Training Effect, the podcast where we uncover how learning systems and training can help your franchise scale efficiently. I'm your host, Doug Mark, and today we're talking with Carrie Pratt, Franchise Liaison at Corporate Cleaning Group. Now, Carrie's an expert in systematizing operations across multiple franchise locations, and she's played a key role in standardizing training, improving efficiency, and ensuring quality control for Corporate Cleaning Group's franchise network. Today, we're going to break down how training systems can really help a franchise scale effectively without becoming totally overwhelming. Come on, let's dive in. So, Carrie, before we get started and get into the mechanics of training systems, let's start with a little bit of a sort of background from you. When we talk about, scaling a franchise, most people think of, real estate, marketing, hiring more people. But one of the most overlooked aspects is training and how do you get everybody on the same page and ensure quality across all of your locations. Now, your journey's been deeply connected in this process. So can you share a little bit about, your journey into franchise operations and training, Carrie?
Yeah. Thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it, Doug. Sort of a different path. And I think probably most franchise people who get into franchising can say that. It was sort of a different path on how I got here. But I do believe mine is a little unique in the fact that I'm actually a social worker by trade. So I have my master's degree in social work and 20 plus years of nonprofit leadership and working with all kinds of different populations. After 20 plus years in social work, you kind of get a little burnout and said, I'd like to get out of this nonprofit arena. So I started looking, and as you can imagine, a difficult leap. Took me almost a year to find my way. And one of the things I train on is the power of networking as it relates to platforms like LinkedIn. That's how I landed this gig. The miraculous carpet ride, I call it, of being with Corporate Cleaning Group. As I was seeking to, find my new career path in the not-for-profit, noticed the director of operations role with Corporate Cleaning Group and said, hey, while I was in grad school, I had my own little cleaning company and said, I can transfer my skill set over to this gig here. And Len Jacober, who's the founding owner of Corporate Cleaning Group, proceeded to review my resume, crumble it in the trash, and throw it away. And I was very active on LinkedIn at the time, noticed somebody who knew Len and said, hey, how do you know this guy? And they happened to be somebody that I had hired in a previous role. The rest is history. She reached out to him. He reached out to me. And actually celebrating my 10-year anniversary today. So this could not be better timing to be able to be celebrating my 10-year anniversary and sharing what an amazing company and partnership that I have with this company. We specialize cleaning for medical facilities, private schools, churches, large office buildings, car dealerships, childcare centers, nothing retail, nothing residential. Really try to stay in our lanes with that. And have spent a lot of resources and time in making sure that experience when you look us up and you're starting to engage with our company is just a different experience, right? So I knew immediately when I met Len, I was like, wow, this is somebody that I want to partner with. And like I said, the rest has been history. I call it the magic carpet ride of one of the best experiences of my life in terms of my career, and couldn't be happier.
Well, that is awesome. Congrats on 10 years. That is a really great milestone. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. And you talked a little bit about your background and kind of starting out in social work. So I'm going to put a shameless plug in for the University of Michigan because I believe that's where you got your master's and that's where our CEO, Dave Wilcox, is from. And so I know you Michiganders love to hold up your mitten and tell us where you live. So at some point, you show us where you live on the mitten.
Yeah. So it was probably, sort of in the middle. I was about 20 minutes west of Detroit, 20 minutes east of Ann Arbor is where I ended up, landing my landing pad, if you will. Born and raised in Michigan. And my graduate degree is University of Michigan. Alma mater, loved the school, gave me a lot of opportunities, was able to do some great things in my social work career. So,
well, that was awesome. And I know it was a bit unexpected for me to talk about the Michigan, background, Dave's always talking about this sandwich shop called Zingerman's.
Oh, yes. And I actually utilize, it's so funny you say that. I utilize a lot of the Zing train. So if there's I'm going to give them a quick plug because I absolutely love Zingerman's, and their customer service training is world renowned. Zingtrain.com is something that I train all of our franchise managing partners, is an excellent resource. They have a lot of free content. They have a lot of live. They go internationally to provide this training. And yeah, absolutely. If you're from Michigan and you haven't heard of Zingerman's, there's something wrong with you.
I love that. Thanks for humoring me there. I'm going to kind of phrase a couple of different questions as we chat along here. But when we think about like one of the biggest challenges that franchise owners face is kind of maintaining that consistency across, locations or units or whatever you're calling them. And whether it's, service quality, customer experience, operational efficiency, everything always kind of ties back to how well your team is trained. But training isn't just about that initial, onboarding training, right? It's kind of creating the system that ensures that long-term, success. So when I'm talking to you, Carrie, why is that notion of standardized training such a critical component for, multi-unit franchises?
You're absolutely right. I think it's from A to Z in terms of when you're looking at different franchise units, what their level of support, what they say they're going to do and what they actually do, right? That's in a lot of environments. But I do believe that standardization and us being, I think one of the things that sets us apart, not only we're just awesome, but that we still do the work that we're training our franchise managing partners to do, right? So we still have a book of business under the corporate office, the franchisor, to be able to beta test a lot of things. So when we come out and we'll make adjustments to our training systems, it's because we've already tested it and we can give you an ROI and we can share with you the experience that our own management team in the field has been able to do for some time to say this is, best practice and what we would recommend. As it relates to, just having that core, what I call core foundation as a company, having the core foundation and being able to have, the proof is in the pudding in terms of our engagement strategies as it relates to our own team members. So it's at every level. We have our own teams. We have our own leadership on the corporate side of our book of business where we have been practicing these methods for, several decades to be able to utilize that as part of our standardized training with all of what we call our franchise managing partners, because we're truly big believers in the word partnership as it relates to our franchise owners, our team members, our customers. It's all about the partnership. It's not about the contract. It's not about the FDD. It's not about the ops manual. It's about us being a partner with you and what we call being part of the CCG family.
I love that answer so much. I don't know if you could see me nodding along, but that notion of partnerships, right? Because this is what I've, tried to impress upon my team too, is that every client, we're partnered and we're actually integrated in their business. We're an extension of them because we're supporting individual franchisees that are out there. So I love to kind of hear how important that is to you guys and to Len and the team. And I also love this notion of, how you guys are doing your training today. And it's not just the initial training, right? So when we talk about onboarding training, that's one thing, but you just alluded to the fact of, as things change, as things evolve, maybe you're adding another niche market, maybe there's a new product. So how does that, ongoing training system impact the long-term success at Corporate Cleaning Group?
That's a great question. And I think that is another sort of golden nugget for us, I believe. Our franchise managing partners would say that, they could not ask for a better support model. The onboarding training is significant hours of live in-person training. A lot of folks would say, oh, it's a cleaning company. Cleaning's easy. Well, yeah, but if you're looking at the level of standardization and the consistency of clean with the cleaning for health model, we're using hospital grade disinfectants. We're cleaning surgery centers. This is not just making sure there's no dust in the area. So getting that hands-on live training on the front end, and then that's both on the sales and operations side. So all of the firsts we're going to be there hand holding, if you will. We say sort of the parent child. We're going to show you the way. We're going to role model it. We're going to have you do it. We're going to provide constructive feedback. And then you're out there, you're landing your first accounts. We're doing all those first with you. On the sales side, how do what are the systems we want you to follow for marketing drops? What are the systems we want you to follow for your first walkthrough with the customer? So you have that consistency in the brand of what we're doing. So the messaging for what I may be sharing with you today, you were to interview a franchise managing partner, you should be hearing the same messaging. And that actually continues on for quite some time. And the frequency and duration may ebb and flow based on their book of business. So we might have a franchise managing partner who has a stable book of business, but it's all churches and schools. And then all of a sudden they land a big hospital system or a fairly, large surgery center. We're going to hop back in, increase that frequency because it's a first. We're going to go through the first of now you have some heightened compliance factors you need to consider, some heightened OSHA regulations that you'll want, to be taking note of. And we go through that level of support. It doesn't really stop. I mean, we're here and then we have several ongoing platforms to help support and make sure that they feel engaged all along the way. I mean, like I said, it's like a family, so it's not going away. I'm not disowning you. Your success is all of our success.
I couldn't ask for a better segue into this next question, which I was super excited about, to begin with, of course, because it's talking a little bit about, what kind of systems we're using to kind of support the owners and the franchisees and their staff. So when we talk about, recognizing the importance of training being one thing, but implementing a system that actually works is kind of the other challenge there. And a lot of franchises absolutely struggle with rolling out a training program because they don't know where to even begin. Or maybe they fear it's going to take too much time. Is it too much effort, too much money? But you've helped, Corporate Cleaning Group build a system that really works. Can you walk us through kind of that process a little bit? How did Corporate Cleaning Group approach setting up like an LMS?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we do use several platforms. It'd be wonderful if we could have one platform that would give us everything. It's not out there. We haven't found it. And, one of the reasons when we were searching for the learning management system and of course, partnered with LearningZen, absolutely love you guys. One of the reasons we partnered with LearningZen is that we were able to provide our own content. A lot of these platforms out there are very automated, voiceover, PowerPoint to an audio where you're just talking the words, where LearningZen allows us to provide our own content, very easy to upload, customize it, and it gives what I call the vibe. It provides the vibe that we want for the culture of Corporate Cleaning Group. You're going to hear my voice on some of our leadership training and things like that. That was very important to us, for us to be able to do that without, nickel and diming every time we want to make a change. We're able to do those things seamlessly from our own corporate office, was a huge thing. And I think that the value to our team members or, either franchise managing partner, new because they're part of LearningZen, coming through, providing training content, taking exams, all of that just provides a level of professionalism. Len's vision and dream has always been to make sure that we have a heightened level of professionalism. We're next level and people experience that from us. I think that we're allowed to do that, through the LearningZen platform. Then we utilize other strategies, which I'm sure we'll get into in terms of being able to we're an industry-based, field-based industry where our folks are out there in the field. So we need to have ways to be able to provide opportunities for ongoing training and support. LearningZen allows us to do that. If we're doing things on the front end for our team members or franchise managing partners, they do things before they even come to Michigan for their initial onboarding. So we're providing training content for them before they come to us. I think all of that, our team members providing training content so they get to know us as a company, just as a different experience. They're like, wow, who are these people? It's not just the mom and pop shop.
Well, I have a couple of different awesome takeaways from that. And one I absolutely love, and it's one that we always are like encouraging, LearningZen, users, enthusiasts to live by, which is, you put, your own people into the videos, right? Or into the training.
Yeah.
So they're hearing this voice that they connect with, right? And it's this another sort of extension of the brand and the brand standards where, hey, you know what? That's not just like a paid actor, that's in here kind of talking about something they don't understand. This is Carrie and she understands this stuff. And I know her and I've talked to her on the phone. And so I just love the human element that creates from an e-learning system. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it did kind of bring me down the road of a question that I just thought of, which is obviously, a brand like you was massively impacted by, COVID when it happened. Did, the fact that you had an LMS make it a little bit easier for you guys to kind of get information out to your community about things that may have changed because of COVID regulations and restrictions?
I mean, I have to say, and I've shared this with Len, having been a social worker and executive leadership in, pretty stressful populations, chronically mentally ill, substance abuse, I had life and death decisions for many years in my roles. I did not understand the level of stress until COVID hit, and literally most stressful time of my career. But I'm so proud to have been a part of being able to be a leader with Corporate Cleaning Group. And the amount of amazing team members. I mean, I could just start crying now. I mean, just the things for our folks that they said yes to our community, to our customers. And to answer your question, the LMS wasn't a huge part, just to be honest with you. I would wake up in the morning and have a customer calling me and saying that their medical facility had now transitioned into a testing center where they had the drive-through with their team members in hazmat suits, and my people were having to come in as day porters and assist with all of that. So we were on the fly, but I can say because of our level of expertise in the industry and having worked with medical facility surgery centers for as long as we have, we were very confident in being able to communicate those changes to our customers. And we were on the forefront. We already had hospital-grade disinfectants. We already had a stock of gloves and all of those other things that the other companies were not able to be there for them. So,
yeah, it makes sense because I think about that time and it was frantic for a lot of people, right? We had franchisees that were nervous, and in your world, like their entire business model was like changing and like shaken up overnight
every day,
and
yes,
and so I think what that kind of shows me though is that you guys do have really good systems in place. You have really good support in place, and you're able to kind of make it through that period. It's really a testament to your brand, your leadership, and I think the systems that you guys have in place. That's really cool. So Carrie, what are the biggest roadblocks that franchisors face when trying to implement structured training, and how do you kind of help them overcome those things?
The word that pops to my mind: change. Right? I mean, no one likes the word change. I think, the biggest thing for me is that I was involved. I'm proud to say that was integral with our team of transitioning from the old school paper back in the day to electronic platforms. We're almost 100% electronic platform now. And so I can say with 100% confidence that it's about the wording. So when I have a franchise managing partner saying, well, I'm not sure that my team members are going to take the time to go on to LearningZen and do that onboarding 17-minute video. I know that if we could do it, and again, this is why I believe that having our book of business helps, because we're doing it. When I can share with you that we have 300 employees and we have a 85, 88% success rate of folks doing this, when you have 100 employees and you're telling me no one's able to do it, we need to have more of a conversation. How can I help support you and how you're messaging this out to folks? So change is the biggest. And if you're the barrier as the franchise managing partner, thinking through how to adjust the words that you're using. And instead of asking a question, do you think you could do this? Okay, the next step in our onboarding process is this. And I'll be getting a confirmation when you're done with your training content. It'll provide me with an email notification and I can reach out to you for the next step. Let's get your start date rolling. So it's just about a positive messaging to make that happen. And I think once they start to see that success is happening, they'll start seeing more of the longevity too, because you are providing that professional experience to your team members of, oh, wow, I didn't know that they did this, that, and, they're color coding microfiber cloths. And they're just more confident when they're coming to their first shifts, which is going to increase your engagement and hopefully provide for more longevity with your team members.
That's awesome. And I love that it really comes back to communication, and you guys did such a good job with that. Yeah, that's incredible. So Carrie, this next question is a fun one because I think it's going to get into some of the meat of what you've done. But as franchises grow, look, we've all seen the old ways of training, right? There's certainly paper manuals and operations documents, and there's in-person workshops, word of mouth instructions, sometimes over the phone. And the biggest challenge with all of those, methods that we're talking about is you can't scale those, right? Because you can't be at all places at all time. So I know technology is definitely a game changer in how training's being delivered and managed at Corporate Cleaning Group, but making that transition from traditional methods to the digital solutions can be pretty overwhelming. Mm-hmm. How did Corporate Cleaning Group kind of approach that change for your, constituents?
Yeah. I think, scaling up. So you just start with the baby steps. You think about, and I'll say it's not even a commercial cleaning, but it's any franchise unit that's whatever their operations is, thinking through what are my key, hopefully the franchisor has a system. That would be the hope, that the person who's guiding you actually has really solid systems and procedures in place that you just follow. And if you follow the systems, you'll be successful. But not always the case, right? So if I'm looking at something and maybe there's some holes there or things that maybe potentially could be improved and I want to be a part of that change, I'd be thinking about what are my key performance indicators? What do I need to be thinking about in my operations, whether it's sales or the actual workforce side of getting it done, that I know I need to have on a regular basis to know that my business is operating as efficiently and effectively as I need it to. Right? It could be a simple brainstorm exercise. And then I think through what are those KPIs and what data points, where am I going to pull those data points? Do I already have the data points? Do I need to create the data points? If I need to create them, what would be the best platform to be able to do that, the most effective and efficient way? And then how frequently do I need to see it in order to know that I can breathe a little bit? Because as you scale in your book of business, you can't be everywhere at all times. So being able to shift those things, you prioritize. There may be, 80 KPIs, but I only need to know these 10 on the daily. And I need to know these 10 on the monthly, and so on and so forth to know. Because I think it's easy. And this is a conversation I have quite a bit with our franchise managing partners now is, it's really good now because you only have 10 accounts, but when you start to scale up and you have 50, 100, 200 accounts, you're going to need this cadence with your customers, with your inspections, with the platforms that we have in order to know that you still have that foundation and the branding is still there and your systems are still consistent.
Well, that's great and absolutely, resonates with me and sort of my daily life because you're out there making data-driven decisions a lot of the times, right? And you have your key metrics that you guys are looking for. And that fits with you and your background, I know, as well with making some of those data-driven decisions. But we're seeing that a lot more, I feel like, in business and certainly in franchising. So when you mentioned, several different, technologies, I would say, but can you walk us through the kind of tools that you've deployed that maybe have helped to transform operations? Like, are there any sort of apps or tools? I know the learning management system is one thing, but what else are you guys out there using?
I'd say that a really big deal breaker for us was through the Win Team platform. There's an app called Lighthouse. It provides us with real-time communication. When you're thinking about if I have a team of 80 folks, 30 locations, I need to be able to get communication out to them as quickly as I possibly can with the opportunity of what I call a close the loop system on it. So Lighthouse has allowed us to do that not only with just a specific training system where our team member can go in and they scan a QR code in our closet. It will pop up any forms I want them to pop up. The two biggies for us are our job cards and our close down checklist. So these are training tools that our general cleaner team member out there in the field can get, and it provides them with what they need to do the work that we want them to do and be successful at it. Then it also has an auditing or an inspection platform where we're able to customize. Everything is customizable. We're able to customize our inspections. We set KPIs to our management and our key people out in the field to be able to provide those inspections. It also has an area where we can do things like work ticketing. So if a customer were to call me and say, I'm having an issue with this particular area in my building, they're missing it or whatever, I can then set up a work ticket that goes directly to that general cleaner. When they log in for their shift tonight, they're going to see that work there. They're going to see what the information is. I can require media files to be uploaded, and it literally will close a work ticket. They have a notification on the back end that allows us to get real-time notifications immediately when it's submitted to as many people as we want to provide that close the loop. So it's been a really wonderful way for us to shift that hard copy paper of I need to screenshot it, send it over to my general cleaner, have them do what they need to do, screenshot back and all of that, or even hard copy paper of where we were using the old school 3 copies, one of the duplicates goes to corporate office.
I can almost smell like the Xerox smell that, like that was like attached to those forms. I feel like they had a unique, I don't know what that was, but like duplicate, triplicate forms had a funky smell to them. And
whatever that dye is in there.
They're never going to know about this. Like never. There's going to be no need for it. No, that's awesome because, you mentioned how kind of Lighthouse has helped with obviously tracking things, but also from an efficiency standpoint, there's also a sort of a checklist component to that as well. So, and that's an app I feel like that's probably right on their phone, right? You mentioned like they're scanning things in a closet.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
The sort of friend in their pocket, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Oh, that's great. All right. So one of the biggest fears franchise owners have is losing control over the quality as they kind of grow, right? As they expand. When you've got multiple locations, how do you make sure that every unit upholds the same standards, without having good systems in place? I think the customer experience becomes inconsistent or non-existent in some cases, and operational issues slip through the cracks. What strategies do you use to kind of tackle these challenges, Carrie?
I'm a vital part of that through my franchise liaison role. So my playground really is the ops support for all of our franchise managing partners. And I identify trends through what we call them compliance audits. So I say it's not an I gotcha moment, right? It's an opportunity for me to just take a little look-see under the hood and see what's going on. So we do these compliance audits through the Lighthouse platform on different KPIs. Are they onboarding their folks through LearningZen? Are they utilizing their Lighthouse in the way that we would want based on the priority communication flows that we would expect? Are they taking care of their payroll the way that we would want? A few finance, a few sales, just, a 10 or 15 questionnaire where I go in and take a look-see, and then I provide them with the feedback. And if I start to identify that there's some trends with that, I report it during our operations support calls, where we identify what those trends are, whose playground is it in, call it the playground. And if it's my playground, then I will create a live training session, support session that gets recorded. If it's not my playground, it's one of my team members' playground, then they create the content. We schedule these throughout the year based on the trends that we're identifying, and, just giving another layer, just another deposit of support for them to feel like, okay, we're seeing that this isn't really happening the way that we would want. Is it a thorn in people's side, or is it you're just not understanding what we're expecting? And we try to kind of break it down a little bit more to hopefully help folks move to the next level.
Yeah, that actually went on to answer my next question, which is kind of talking about that sort of closing the loop system and how that ensures that things are being identified, resolved, and documented. And you talked a couple of different ways about that, which obviously preempted my question. But if we shifted it slightly to kind of the next one, which is just how do scheduled audits and inspections help franchise brands stay on top of performance benchmarks?
I'll start with our industry first because, it's the definition of cleaning is from A to Z, but we know what the expectation, we know what the threshold should be. I say there's no spring cleaning company coming in. We are the cleaning company. So if we are not getting eyes and inspecting what we expect, who do we have to blame? We have to blame ourselves. So that could be transferred over to any franchise unit, right? Whatever the operations is. If we're not inspecting what we expect, shame on us. So setting up systems that make sense for the particular industry. For us, generally once a month, getting this, what we call second set of eyes on our locations allows us to make sure that we're not having dust accumulation. That's always the big thing, right? If there's dust accumulation, we're not hitting the mark. So really looking for that once a month on our side and looking for ways that it provides us, where I say, again, not an I gotcha moment, but when we're going in and we're inspecting what we expect, that's an opportunity for us to be what I call in the goodness playground. Let's talk about the great stuff that's happening, whatever it is that you're inspecting. And then let's look at where there might be some areas for improvement. How can I be a part of that to help support you? And then have a plan to make us get, from point A to point B. So the closing the loop to me is a significant portion of our training. And it is something that you have to be very conscious of in terms of your interactions, because if you're giving and you're providing and you're not closing the loop with whatever the loop is, with a plan or recap, you're losing an opportunity, right? For us to provide the level of support as a franchisor is our role as what I say, the leader. We are the leader of our family. So if we're not providing those opportunities for constructive feedback and maybe challenging people to think differently, act differently, perform, then we've lost the mark. So looking at that, closing the loop and using that in all of our systems, including our own team members, is very important in our systems.
Yeah, it sounds like that's the case. And it sounds like, someone like you at any franchise organization really brings this wealth of knowledge from these other, I feel like, jobs that you've had and careers that you've had and mentors and leaders, like you mentioned. And I think that that's important really for all businesses to kind of take that. The same way, we're closing the loop is the same thing as in a lot of cases, like, when you expect something to get done, you've asked somebody to do a job, you need to tell them what that job looks like when it's finished, how to complete that job, and when it needs to be done by. And that helps close that loop. And I think that's a critical thing in our space. So Carrie, a well-run franchise, doesn't just happen, certainly doesn't happen overnight, right? It's the result of repeatable, structured systems that allow growth without, sacrificing quality. The difference between, I feel like, struggling franchises and those that scale successfully often comes down to how well can they replicate the success across multiple locations. So what's your approach to onboarding new franchisees and in new locations?
Yeah. So I shared a little bit early on about just there's 20 some hours of live in person. That includes, they're literally doing some classroom. We're doing a lot of hands-on, though. We really believe that if we get them up and moving and understanding, and then from there, so all of that is consistent across the board. The same people do the same portions. We stay in our playgrounds with our level of expertise as it relates to the content. And then, as I mentioned, they go in, they utilize LearningZen as part of the content. We have exams to make sure that we have competency in what it is that we need them to understand. So there's an accountability piece there. And then they have some homework assignments. They go back, they have some things that they have to do when they get back to their location. And then we start touching base with them on the regular. On our side, from the operations, we don't go live, if you will, until they land their first account. Okay. But the sales side is, on board because we want to help them build a book of business. Then once they land that first account, we hop in from the operations side, and then that piece continues as well as the sales, but that piece continues with the regular training that I had mentioned. So they may not have had compliance audits yet because they don't have an account, or maybe they only have a couple, but they still could be involved, and they're invited to those training topics, the content that we record, so they can see. Here's the trend that's happening. Like, I don't want to do that. So they're learning from the things that others may struggle with. And then we have a huge library of resources on an online portal for them where they're able to learn through playbooks and really get prepared, to be successful. And all of that is consistent branding. So they're getting our lingo, they're understanding our vibe, if you will, of what it means to be a franchise managing partner.
I love it because that talks about how we get them initially trained and then how do we kind of do the ongoing support of them, after they've launched and they have their book of business that they're working out of. When I think back to something that you spoke about a little bit earlier, which is making data-driven, decisions and things like that, how do you personally, Carrie, use data and reporting to drive the improvement at Corporate Cleaning Group?
The biggest is the compliance audits. So that's really our touch point. I'd say that the compliance audits, because we have the data points that we know are important. We can see if there's consistency. We can see if there's a gap in what we would like to see in terms of the expectation. So we're taking that and then providing those opportunities to engage them in other ways to really make sure that we're getting engagement that's exciting, the playground that's in the goodness. So we have competitions. So we'll have competitions on sales driven types of things where they can win prizes. There's a distribution list so they all can come together and email each other and learn from each other that way. On the ops side, we're doing things as it relates to, are they engaging their customers or their team members for reviews on Google, Indeed, to really heighten and make sure that they understand they're a part of something bigger. So that competition has been really wonderful to watch over the years because they get pretty competitive, and you see that all happening live through our platform. So that's pretty exciting. And it just ignites that camaraderie that we want to see.
Yeah, it brings a little bit of fire, I feel like. And we see that in training sometimes too, right? We have this notion of like leaderboards and things like that. And it's like you're talking about as far as like having a sales competition. It's even something we've done with our own sales team here at LearningZen when we've got a competition. You often hear like, of like the giveaway, right? Like, whoever the top salesperson is going to get this thing. And it's amazing how much, people love to compete, right? Like
it could just be as simple as like a Yeti cooler or something. Yeah. Just like, I'm going to get that cooler.
It barely matters what the prize is. It's that there is a prize, right? Like No, I love that. That's awesome. All right. We're almost to the very end, but for the people at home that are listening, if somebody is out there and they want to systematize their training, what's kind of the most important takeaways for them, right? Because it's so easy to get overwhelmed when we're thinking about building out a training program, but I think it starts with a few key priorities. So if you were to kind of say, hey, what are the top 3 things that a franchisor should prioritize when looking to scale through training? What would you pick?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind to me is that hopefully they have it. I hate to say that. I don't know how many that don't have it, but it would seem that in our industry, franchising, that if you're going to be out there promoting as a franchisor, you should have a pretty solid system. Yeah. I feel really confident that we do. So we always say no genius attacks for the first year, right? We've been doing this for decades. We are an expert in our industry. Follow our systems. I know it's going to get frustrating. It's a numbers game on both sides, the sales side, the team member side. It's a numbers game, but follow the systems and things will come to play. And it happens over and over and over again. So, but if there isn't a system, you want to start with what are you doing to engage, whether it's you're engaging new franchise units, whether it's engaging team members, what does that screening, onboarding, and engagement process look like? It really needs to be a priority. Your people are your success. You want to make it as easy as possible for them to identify what it is that you're doing. What are you trying to sell them on? Why should they select you? And for us, it is that piece of the family. We want people that are like-minded, who really resonate with the whole people side of things. So we understand that, and our core values really have a lot to do with engagement. Everyone and everything matters. Do what you say you're going to do. Integrity, honesty, trust. It's all about that goodness. It's not about what are your sales numbers and are you going to hit $1 million your first year? That's not what it's about. Yeah, we're about the numbers on some of it, but the engagement is the first piece. So being solid with that and understanding your elevator speech is really, really important. And I would say, I sort of mentioned it earlier in terms of those key performance indicators. What are those data points? Understanding that you're going to need to know those data points and what they are. So when you back away, that what you are monitoring gets attention. And so I say, if it's not getting monitored, it's not going to get attention. It really probably doesn't matter if you're not monitoring it. If your team members see that you haven't looked at your inspection stuff in 6 months, like, why should I be doing inspections? So having those data points, and then again, if you're needing to build it, where is the data? Do you need to build the system in order to gather the data? Setting up effective systems in order to do that, and then literally holding true to monitoring that data, in order to be successful and scale. I think one of the biggest, common mistakes for new leaders, because I've done so much leadership training in my career, is that, we're really good at the yes. We're the yes people. That's why we ended up being in leadership, right?
Yeah.
But learning how to practice our delegation skills, and the more successful we can be in delegating what shouldn't be on our plate or in our playground. And then it provides us not only being able to scale, but it also provides us with the opportunity to help others be leaders. That takes a true skill to understand what those things are. And I have a whole system on how I train our FMPs on that as well.
You talk about that challenge is very real for business owners where they're just trying to do everything themselves, right? And so that delegation piece that you just spoke to, I think really rings true, right? Because you have to have these people in your system that you trust. And you have to have, systems in place that they can follow so they understand how to, again, close the loop. But trusting those people and getting to the point where you can say, hey, I'm going to step a little bit back and I'm going to delegate these things because I need to work on our business while you all are working in it. And I think that's great.
That's perfect. I love that. Working on the business, not in the business. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. We do hear that a lot. And I think that rings true because I mean, anytime you hear about a new franchise owner, that it's very overwhelming, right? At first, there's just so many new things because in a lot of times, they may not have even come from a world that they're working in today, kind of like you did, right? Like it was sort of learning how does the franchising model work and what is, how do I be a really good support person for my franchisees? It's hard to get to that point because they are drinking from a fire hose from day one, right? Like
I love that analogy.
I think they're lucky when they can sort of remember 10% of what they, have absorbed over the first 2 weeks, but the systems and then making sure we've got the right people in place and being comfortable enough delegating those, I think is going to be a big changer, in our space. So what's kind of one lesson that you've learned that had the biggest impact on how you approach franchise operations?
So everybody loves the idea of I want to be my own boss, right? Yeah. They love the whole vision and the dream of that. But being an entrepreneur, being a successful entrepreneur is not for the faint of heart, right? It takes a lot of grit.
Okay.
And we call it the rhino moment. You need to charge ahead when you feel like you got nothing else to give. That's when you're just giving it the rhino and charging ahead and making it happen. So, really making sure that they understand that. And we do a lot of messaging on the front end where we're doing courting. We're engaging with potential FMPs, franchise managing partners, to make sure they understand that it's not, you just hire general cleaners. They go off and do these little mopping and sweeping and cleaning toilets. And then you're going to make millions and be, sitting out in Bali having coffee somewhere. So that's the first thing. The second for me, and this has been true in every walk of life of position I've had, and even my own personal relationships, communication. It's a tough one. Yeah. It's just really tough, but it is key.
Yep.
And I truly believe that it is our role to be a successful leader, to adjust our style to whoever it is that we're facing at that moment, to hopefully try to be as successful as we can with what I call one of Carrie's quotes of getting to the win-win. So, even after 30 some years of doing this, communicating in a way that gets you to the win-win and practicing to adjust that style, because so many folks just say, well, this is the way that I am. Well, the way that you are may not work for everybody. And if you're going to be successful in building a business, you need to be able to adjust that to make sure you can get that right-hand person. You want to grab a right-hand person who maybe has some strengths in areas where you're weak. And I think that's why when Len and I met, it was like magic. It works so well, but communication is imperative, and really just being sensitive, like maybe having somebody look at things for a while. That's how I was able to help some of our leaders in our corporate office of being a general cleaner and moving into management. It's almost this role play. And I feel really strong in this area because of my career in social work. Not everybody is able to play in that playground so much. But I do feel that that's one area where I can help our FMPs, because I can talk that way to say, yeah, that's you being in your playground of, I'm just going to say things directly and so on and so forth. But you're facing Sally, who's your right-hand person, who really needs maybe a little hand-holding. I need you to walk into the hand-holding playground in order to truly build that partnership. So communication is just number one.
Yeah. It's sometimes this is hard for owners, right? Is to realize that you do have some weaknesses, and what you're trying to find there is somebody who, doesn't just let those weaknesses become problematic, but it's somebody who really can kind of address those things. And that's how you build a good core team. And I see this often in my own world, right? Where I have these shortcomings in certain areas that like Cassie really exceeds with, or Joe on my team really exceeds at. And we all kind of have our strengths. And I think it takes pulling together these people of different backgrounds, different priorities, and the things that they're really good at are going to help your business overall, because they're not the strengths that you have. You can't hire a whole bunch of people that think just like you and be successful. That's just not going to work. So
exactly.
Carrie, this has been an incredible conversation. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for coming on. This has been wonderful.
Thank you for the opportunity. This has been a lot of fun.
All right. So this has been a fantastic conversation with Carrie Pratt about how structured training helps franchises scale successfully. If you'd like to learn more about her work, visit corporatecleaninggroup.com or connect with her on LinkedIn. If you found this episode valuable, be sure to subscribe to The Training Effect and leave us a review. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.